Hi, Michael. Thanks for coming. Just gonna wait a couple of minutes, just we get everybody in here. Welcome, Jeremy, as well. All right, I guess we're only three, but we'll get started here. Obviously, these videos are gonna be recorded as well, so that if ever and down the line someone wasn't able to make it because the times are kind of always changing. It's never a specific time. At least you can always look back at the video. So welcome to the second AMA. I know we're supposed to do one about a couple of weeks apart, or like about a month apart. But I wanted to do this one really quickly, following the first one, only because we had such a great turnout. Over the last couple of weeks in terms of growth for the community. We've had quite a few new people coming in. We reached about 100 and 110, 115 more or less. So I wanted to take the time to at least introduce myself to those who kind of already know who I am, but just to introduce those who could come by and at least ask any questions they may have, or basically just get involved in the community any way they see fit. So as you guys know, I'm Emilio, and we started this community about, let's say, mid January, more or less. And the goal of it has always been to inspire young designers, either narrative, level, game, whatever it is, to to get a better understanding of what challenges there are in the industry, but also to grow amongst other aspiring designers as well. So for myself, growing up, I was in marketing a lot of the time, and I never really understood where my passion was. I always liked, macroeconomics. I always enjoyed everything that had to do with, creating markets, or even showcasing, data points to it, based on behavioral things inside of, let's say, a product through engagement or retention. And I got into gaming, I would say, in about 2016, 2017, more or less. And that's where I really realized that this is something that I want to do. This is something that I think I want to follow as a passion. So that's when I made the switch, went to a 1 year degree. And then after that game design degree, I started working for free for about 2.5 years. And throughout the internship, I had some odd jobs here and there. But I realized this is what I wanted to do. And then, lo and behold, after 2.5 years of working as an intern to a game designer, I got approached by Ubisoft to work as an economy designer, and that's where I've been I'd say the last year and a half. So that's going to be changing soon, as I accepted another role as a senior economy designer at another company. I cannot say yet, as this is my last week at UB, so I can't really disclose too much information there. But regardless to say, that's the steps that I took growing. And I realized that a lot of times, it's hard to get those things. 'Cause I got lucky. I had knew someone who, gave me the ropes, that taught me a bit along the way. But we're left for ourselves, more or less. And that's the goal of this community, is, for me to give you guys a hand. Try to help you guys in your all situations, because I know we have a lot of people from different parts of the world. So obviously different customs or traditions are different, in terms of how to break into the industry, right? So, but there is always a global approach, and that's always having a strong portfolio. It's always having good pieces of work to showcase. It's always having a good LinkedIn, and also having a resume or CV that really sparkles and attracts the people. So yeah, and that's the point of this community, is just so that we could all help each other. And yeah, and that's pretty much short introduction there to myself, and to continue on the same path. The notes I have for today are going to be a bit sporadic, but I want this to be more of an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. I know we have 6 people, which is fantastic. So I want you guys to ask questions in the chat. I have the live chat open on the side, so you could ask your questions, and then at the end, I'm going to summarize a bit, some of the main points here, but also going to highlight what's going to be coming up in the other Udemy courses as well, because this is what brought everybody in together. So I have a couple of highlights on the side that I'm going to be shooting there. So I'm going to leave the floor open for you guys to ask away, and yeah. I'm curious to see what you guys are considering, or what you guys want to ask me, and these could be personal questions to me. If you guys want me to divulge a bit of information of the company I'm going to, not a problem. I don't mind sharing that. If you guys want to ask me, some technical questions about the project you're working on, absolutely, that's what I'm here for. Or that's it. It could be anything you guys want. For me, it's open floor. I will um I will probably take this opportunity to discuss a bit about what was in the pipeline for the rest of the courses. Um in the first project that we have, the level design course, I did mention that we are going to be adding a couple of new sections. Um I'm actually going to be adding on top of that rational design, as well as a rational level design, as well as I think that's important, at least from the onset, to kind of understand rationally what's going on. So this is something that I've been working on the side with some of the people at Ubisoft. Um, so I'm gonna most probably get involved in creating an extra section on top of that. So looking forward to that, and I'm gonna start answering some questions here. Um, I see that there's two sides to the question. So I have people commenting on uh, the post, and then people live commenting. So I'm not too sure why it's doing that, but it's okay. I'll get some. I'll start off with Michael and his first question, then I'll get back to Hendrick and Maria. So Michael's question was first off-topic question: have you seen the Uncharted movie? And what do you think about narrative in this movie? In my opinion, it was good, but some dialogues were really bad. All right, I didn't see the movie with Tom Holland yet. I think he's a brilliant actor, but I have not seen that movie, unfortunately. So I can't comment whether it was good or bad. Um, Narratively speaking, from what I understood from the things I've read online, or at least discussed with some of my colleagues, they said that the movie lacked a bit of life. So there's that aspect to it. I mean, I have to watch the movie. I haven't had time, unfortunately. It's been a bit chaotic the last few weeks with my departure from Ubisoft. So been juggling a lot of things. Haven't had any time for real movie stuff. But when I do watch it, I will I'll message you, Michael, and we could discuss about all those points. Um, okay, so Hendrick asks, I would like to hear a bit more in depth on how you got into gaming dev, so your first steps and stuff. Awesome question. Okay, so I mentioned a bit of it, but I guess I'll go into more details about how I did it. So for me, Montreal, first of all, just to get so we all understand, Montreal is an unbelievable hub to get into the industry. There's two factors. Number one, there's a government grant that subsidizes a lot of the expenses companies need to start up. So that's number one. So if you're having a gaming company in Montreal, you could ask for this grant, and it will pay for quite a bit of the financing required to get it kickstarted. So that's number one. That's why it's such a lucrative area. Number two, subsequently, it's connected. There's a lot of companies in Montreal that offer game design as a role, and it could be from junior to, let's say, mobile to indie, AAA. There's a lot of different branches here, so that's why that's why it's easier, obviously, for someone born in the area to kind of make the transition. But I could explain more in depth the steps I took. So starting off, and like I said, I was fortunate. I was very fortunate to get kicked off. But as I said, I started off in a 1 year intense game design program in Montreal at Intertech College, and this is a 1 year intensive. So the price was about 16,000, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't recommend people doing this. The information I learned there, it could easily be easily be taken in any other, a online course um, or reading a book. Like I really had to push out after graduating to adapt or to understand more. So I think the price point was terrible. It was very expensive, but I started there. I did a year, and basically what the courses were, it was split up in two semesters. So two big sections. There was one section was the learning part, and it was a general, and then the other part was overall the creating a project and understanding a bit more of the game design process. And throughout that time, I was lucky because one of the teachers I had a good connection with, and we he actually owned an Indian company, so that's kind of where I went to go work right after for free. I worked as a free intern for free game designer for let's say 2 years and a half. But after I graduated, he saw some promise in me, so he said, "Okay, do you want to come work with me?" I said yes. So after graduating, I got that free internship with him and his company. It wasn't just me; he gave it to a couple of other people as well, because he usually takes on those individuals. But like I said, it's free, so I had to work. I worked my actual job as a barista. That's what I was doing. I made coffees, and then I would work with him. So that's where. But throughout that time, while I was there for 2.5 years, I went to. I had to learn a lot of books, and that you kind of see a couple of them here. I posted a couple of them on Twitter as well, but there was a lot of books that I read to get a better understanding of what I wanted to do. Right. So throughout that time, I was just a general good game designer. I understood, economics. I understand marketing, so I kind of leaned more or less towards economy design slowly. But the steps I had to take was I had to first of all understand the niche craft I was looking. That's number one. So when you are a designer, you have to know what is my niche. What do I like doing? What do I want to do for the next 40 years or 30 years, whatever it is. And generally speaking, it's a lot of things that are going to be related to, let's say, our cultural background or through, let's say, personal experiences, through what you've been through. So for me, like I said, I did marketing. I liked it. I did economy design, economics in general, like macro, micro, and just understanding how supply and demand work in any function or any society inside of games as well. So I found that niche, and then I went and I learned everything about that. So I created basically a mind map of how I wanted to go about designing or wanted to go about learning, economy design. So what I did was, while still working for the company, while obviously working as a barista, I would look online to job descriptions and I would see what their qualifications were. What did you need? What were the requirements? And I would take that example. Let's say you need to know Excel. I would take that and I would just go online. I would look at Excel courses and I would just plug myself away and try to learn it as best as I can and just absorb as much as I can. And then obviously throughout that time, I got better. I honed my skills to the point where obviously I applied to quite a few jobs and didn't pass. That's just what it is. I applied, I think, for at least 14, 15 different types of jobs, game design, junior positions, systems positions. There was a wild ride I had with a Sweden company right before the pandemic happened, which I could get into later if you guys want to know. It was the longest process I've ever seen in my life there. Um, but yeah, so I went through a couple of different stages to get into gaming, and at the end, that's where I ended up being approached by Ubisoft. So at one point, because I had all this experience, right? So I was still working as an intern or a game designer for that indie company, but I was also with practice, right? Interviewing, doing interviews, doing tests, aptitude tests. You get better. It's normal. Humans, that's what they're able to do. They're able to adapt to situations. So obviously, the first interview I completely bombed it because I was nervous. I was sweating. But the second one I got a bit better. Third one, fourth one. Now, if I do interviews, I snooze through them because you just have that practice. So that's kind of the steps I took. I kind of went on a bit of a roller coaster ride there for answering the question, but I hope I explained it, Hendrick, to the best of my abilities. But yeah, that's kind of what I did. Maria asks, what are some good volunteering ideas after completing the narrative design class? Okay. So for me, volunteering specifically, I think it's tough because a lot of the times online, like you guys are, I don't know if you guys are on Facebook as much as I am, but in terms of the groups, but there are communities such as, let's say, the game designer group, or there's also some other indie designer groups, and a lot of times, with let's say 150,000 like people in it, which at this point I don't think there's that many active. Um, but a lot of them, like, they ask, hey, do you want to help for this and that? Do you want to do this and that? And it's always free. No one really has any capital to invest into you. So for me, I think I wouldn't consider it volunteering. Um, I wouldn't consider it volunteering. I would consider it, how could you expand your portfolio? I mean, look, if there's companies that you're willing to contact, cold calls, and go, hey, do you guys need a narrative designer? I'll work for free. Then, you power to you, you go do that. But it's difficult because, I don't know where you're situated. I don't know what the climate is needed for, let's say, in the game industry specifically over there. Um, I know now with online or with remote work, it's easier to get into those situations, but I would avoid anything related to game communities because I've realized, I mean, it's unbelievable the lack of structure a lot of these guys have, or like how these companies handle their stuff. Like they'll have, let's say you join a group, right? And they're like, hey, okay, like let's pick a couple of people, because I have joined at least 5, 6 groups, like little startups there, with to work for free to help them with whatever narrative stuff like that. And what they lack, and it's all the same, is they lack structure. Nobody knows how to properly create their milestones or properly create a scope or a production pipeline from start to finish. That's the biggest thing they all lack, and that's how they all fall on their ass. Each and every single one of them. There's not one I've seen that has been successful because, like I said, they don't know how to do the proper structure, and that's the problem that I see, in that. So my advice, Maria, is not to see volunteer. Like, yes, you could keep your ears out, but I would focus on you. Focus on what you like. What do you like writing about? That's the biggest thing. As a writer, your creative capabilities are exponentially larger than that of a designer, where a designer focuses on rational. Okay, how does this system work in terms of this feature, and how is that connected to the economies? There has to be modular as well, because we have to take this exact same replica and put it into this game mode. Creativity has no boundaries, so you could create whatever you want. And that's what I tell a lot of the designers that I have. I was talking to another designer, Alejandro, who created a online narrative where it's a clicker and you just make choices and you go through it. And I'm like, dude, this is fantastic. All you need to do now is write a narrative design document. That's it. And attach it. And then with your CV, and you're good to go. And then you just start going into different genres. You did a point and click first. Okay, cool. Now do an RPG game. Now do let's say a horror slash hack and slash. Do different genres and just expand your portfolio piece. That's the biggest thing I could suggest. Because, and obviously do reading into that genre as well. If it's something that are not familiar with in terms of writing, let's say you've been always a bit of fantasy, sci-fi individual, pick up a horror book, read it, understand it, try to understand what they're trying to encapsulate there, and then see if you create a book or a game, narrative design game around that genre, because now you understand what the author was trying to extract from the book, and immerse the reader into it. That's kind of where I would go with that. I would try to look at different genres and write design documents around them, with your own characters, and really, really go deep, like get the gusto out. That's what I would suggest doing for that. Um, Lucas says hello, Luca. Always a pleasure. Michael asks, okay, I'm here. A lot of people says that narrative designers should know a bit about game engines like Unity or Unreal, but what exactly should we know? Programming, implementation, or what? Okay, that is a awesome question. Very good question, and I think it's twofold, because it depends. It depends on the engine, but it also depends on the studio, right? Um, for example, different game studios are going to use different tools to create their own stuff, right? They're going to have their own in-depth studio, like they're going to have their own like game engines. Like at Ubisoft, we have Snowdrop, like it's a brand new engine that I'm working with, right? It's not Unreal, it's not Unity, it's not Game Maker, it's not Godot, it's not Buildbox, not nothing. It's completely new, and I gotta absorb myself to understand it. I think the biggest thing for a narrative designer to know is there's a couple of real good tools that exist. One of them is called Artisy Draft. Artisy is very good for creating storytelling and also game content management as well. So Artisy is very good. There's another one that I would say is like dialogue design as well. That's a good one. Another good tool to know. But these aren't required, right? Like they're not gonna check to see if you know this. They just want to see if you understand how you're able to implement your stuff. But then again, they want to check your writing. That is the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing for writing. It's do you understand how to take what the game designer has created? So let's say we have. I mean, now I'm giving you guys a bit of secrets here. We're not going to keep a shush there, but in the game we have, let's say, gadgets that the player uses, right? You know, or things that the tools that they use, right? And we call them something, right? But in theory, the player, the narrative designer has to come up with actual game tools, right? Like actual names for these tools. So he's gonna probably call the extraction. You know, he's gonna call it something interesting instead of us calling it, let's say, a tool. You know, we call it this tool, the mechanic of the tool. But the designer has to come up with a name, and that name is based on what the creative director has envisioned for the game. If the vision is like based on science or it's based on let's say fantasy, like you have to first of all understand the genre and then work with the creative director to come up with names to associate these new game mechanics with those names and see if it sticks, if it makes sense. So that's what it is in terms of programming language. Like I said, and I'm gonna answer the question again. Don't worry about it, Maria. Artisy is very good. Artisy Draft 3. That's a good one. And the other one was dialogue design as well. I mean, there's a bunch. I could put them in the. I could put them in the. I could put them in the chat. Just give me a second. I have to pull the list up. So I have a couple of them on the side. Unreal has Artisy inside. There is an integration tool in there, so that's what's cool about it. And there's also a couple of elements that I didn't name, but they're all on the side here. I'll put them in the chat. I'll make a post specifically regarding that. So I'm just gonna write that down on the side on my notes so that I can remember that later. Awesome. Okay, so that will be added after this call. All right. Maria asks, would you mind posting a list of books that you studied? Yeah, that's not a problem at all. I absolutely can do that. I will also put a list of the books I've read. So many good books. I think the best book. I'm gonna just snap it here. I think the best book to start off with, I have to say, is probably this book here. By Scott Rogers, Level Up. I think this book is really good because it gives it covers a lot of high level topics, and it also gives you a good idea of how designers think. Right. So here, example, I'll just give you some of the synopsis here. Like some of the chapters start off with explaining a welcome page, but writing the story for a game, the 3 C's, so the character, camera, and control. Talks about sign language, so HUD and icons, elements of combat. Like this book is unbelievably like worth the price. This was the first book I read, and I really grabbed a lot of information from this book. And I've thanked Scott Rogers on the side because it's been able to really push me as a designer. So that's a book number 1, and I'm gonna definitely put that in the chat as well. I'll make the list as well. Thank you, Hendrick. Yeah, and thanks, Marina, as well. Thank you, appreciate it. All right. Not a problem, man. Welcome. You're welcome as well. So, Luke asks, name for assets. So something like, let's say, a pet companion that buffs a player that gets designed as a fluffy ball and named Floaties by the designer, causes lore reasons and whatever. Stuff like that. Yeah. So example, oh, man, I wish I could talk about our game. I really do because I really want to, because I have concrete examples of stuff like that. But Um, I'm gonna try to think of, but it's a good point. So let's say think of it like Destiny 2. They have exactly that, right? They have, let's say, the companion that floats around, right? And you know, they have, let's say, they call them the buff ball, because I mean it's what they're gonna call it, right? They're gonna call it the ball that buffs the players with whatever, or helps the players, thing like that. Like we'd probably call it, just let's say, just we'd call it just a pet thing. The narrative designers are gonna look at that, and they're gonna be like, okay, what purpose does it serve? Like, is it sci-fi? Is it related to, because obviously Destiny is related to sci-fi. Is it something that could be, you know, that could die? Does it have a life? Does it have character to it? So they have to write all this stuff, the narrative lines, you know, the interactions with the player, creating that connection between the two of them. Now, these are all things that our narrative designers are going to do, because it makes sense to give the player that immersed feeling that it's not just a pet; it's something like R2D2, right? Like that's literally the what they use for that example. Is some as a droid that follows around an individual and gives them hand in, you know, the daily tasks as an asset, more than anything else. So yeah, so I think it's always important that if you do create companions, they could take, in theory, don't look at it as at the form, but look at the function. That's the biggest thing. The form could be anything, but when you're designing stuff, like from narratively speaking, look at uh look at the function. What is it doing? What is this companion doing? How is it helping? You know, what could we say about the character that we could create? You know, an interaction with this other pet. You know, and then also, what tropes could we use? That's the biggest thing as well. Is there's tropes you could use. You know, good cop, bad cop, where, you know, the player's like a good player, but his companion is like just super evil for some reason, and he just wants to kill everything or destroy everything, right? Create those tropes, and then you could have interesting back and forths with them as well. So there's a lot of stuff you can do here. When designing, let's say, companions, for a player character. So so that's it. So yeah, so Marina says, I have a bachelor's degree in architecture, and now I started a 2 year specialty in games. Also, I'm studying online with free courses like yours, and I'm working on my portfolio. Do you think it is a good way to enter in the industry? Do you have any advice for those who are changing careers? Thanks. Yes. So it is. I mean, look, having a bachelor's in architecture really helps. It depends also what field you're going in. Also, if you're going into level design, like, that's probably the most ideal situation. If you find that boring, don't worry about it. Game design is just as much fun too. Um, but yeah, I think this is a good way. Sorry, I think this is a good way to approach it, because I mean this is more or less what I did. I had a marketing degree, a bachelor's in marketing, right before I decided to go into gaming, and yeah, and I did basically this. I mean, this is exactly what I did. Like high level, I did a specialization. I took online things. I read books on the side, and I made my portfolio pieces on the side as well. And yeah, and that's pretty much what I went about to getting into the field. So I mean, I think the biggest thing I would say is it's not specifically what you do. It's not your physical state. I call it physical because it's things that you're able to do physically, like write, type, and do that. But it will be more of a challenge uh on your mental state and emotional too at the same time. What I mean by that is, it's very scary changing fields. I know for me, it wasn't something. It was a bit of a discourse, going through the growing pains of trying to learn everything as quickly as possible so I could get in. Like I said, I didn't really make big. I didn't really get into, let's say, Ubisoft really right away. It was 2.5 years of grunt work and working 2 jobs at once. It was obviously, it was discouraging, failing every single time. Let's not cut through the let's cut through the fabric. It wasn't fun for sure. It is challenging, guaranteed. And sometimes you do feel that you are not worth, worth the time and effort that you've been putting into it. Um, but once you crack it, like, it's a euphoric experience. So my advice is, don't get discouraged. plug away. Always focus on the goal and don't let anything else distract you because there is going to be a lot of distractions for sure. Whether it's internally from yourself telling yourself you're not good enough, whether it's people telling you don't do it, whether it's things that you read online that say it's not smart, whatever. Don't listen to that. Listen to yourself. If this is what you want, this is what you have to do, and you go for it. So, man asked, may I know any software you can suggest for me for learning sculpting? Sculpting, I guess. I think sculpting in terms of like 3ds Max or ZBrush. I think those are the ones that are for modeling. I guess sculpting is modeling in this sense. So yeah, so either or are completely good. I don't model. I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible. I made a robot in school. It was terrible. Looked really bad. But yeah, for sculpting, I would say yeah, either or of those tools are very good. 3ds Max or ZBrush are two very good tools to learn. And they're needed for sure for modeling. Michael asks, by the way, is degree even needed in game industry? I found my first job as a narrative designer in a small indie studio in Poland. I'm just after high school and I'm thinking I should go to college. No, man, no, absolutely not. You do not need that whatsoever. I've realized, okay, so this is the biggest thing, right? A lot of companies, they're gonna put on their CV, require bachelor's degree in game design, require master's degree in economics, require blah 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 in doo doo doo. None of that matters, and I'll explain to you why. Because I've done it. I mean, I've seen the hiring process. You know, I've been in Ubisoft. I've been inside of interview processes, and I've looked at people's CVs, and I just go, like, in theory, this person has none of the qualifications, but the person knows exactly what they're talking about. They know exactly what they're talking about, and their portfolio speaks volumes to what they're saying. I'm not saying that going to these things. So I did the 1 year degree, you know, and Marina is doing one as well. I wouldn't say doing them is bad. It's not. It's not. Mine was bad. Don't do mine. Don't spend $16,000. That's a terrible idea. Do not do that. I'd rather just teach you for free at that point. I'm not saying they're bad. What I'm saying is that if you really do not understand fully the concepts of game design or understand the full concept of how the game industry works, they're good primers to help you as an individual flesh out what you enjoy doing the most and guide you into that direction. More or less. There is some schools in Montreal. There's one, NAD. We call it NAD. It's NAD. I don't know that it's a French school. I don't know the name in English. But generally speaking, this school is the prime school that where if you come out of here, there's a good chance you're gonna get a job. There are some that are, but in order to get into there requires portfolio pieces, requires interview processes. So it's like a private school at this point. If you see that and you could get into that, that's like the fast track because it's a private school. It's the fast track to get into the industry. But if you can't, then there's the harder way, as I could say it is learning, writing out your stuff, creating your portfolio. It's all that stuff. So I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, or you need one, because a lot of times I see is they don't need one. And if you already have a job as a narrative designer, man, that's already a portfolio piece that you could use. That is fantastic. So you're good to go already. And then you just I mean, this is what I do. I would absorb and ask so many questions and try to grab all the attention you can from the people that are there. So that, once it's time for you to move on or whatever happens, because then nothing lasts forever. Famous quote from Tyrannus talking to Arthas in Wrath of the Lich King. Anyways, so nothing lasts forever. So you're definitely gonna move on somewhere else. So that's why it's always important to absorb, retain, and be able to extract when you need to. That's how I see it at Ubisoft. My time there was fantastic. I learned a lot. I learned way more than I bargained for. And I absorbed a lot of information, which was good, which allowed me to make my next step in my career. So, like I said, you don't need a degree. To sum up more or less, you don't need a degree. They're not gonna put a gun to your head and go, no, if you don't have this degree, we're not hiring you. Absolutely not. But if you're already starting in a company, especially, even if it's indie, it doesn't matter. As long as the company makes sense there and it's good, you can use that as a portfolio and it's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so Maria asks, how do you know when you're ready to start contacting companies as another designer? What do you need in your portfolio? That is an awesome question. I love this question. I love answering this question because it really depends. It's super case by case, and it also depends on what's going on in the market as well. What I mean by that is AAA wise, so in the production phases, right? So let's say my company now, like we're in the production phase, we're working. We didn't need a narrative designer for the first 2 months. Sorry, 2 years of the project. We need one now, right? So the first thing is 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 a lot of the companies, they're, even though they're always accepting applications, it doesn't necessarily mean they need one at the time. So you should always contact. That's the thing. Is you should always contact because there's no right or wrong time, because you don't know what their production cycle is. You can't say, "Oh, I'm ready. Let's do it now." That's number one. Number two is, what do you need in a portfolio? Generally speaking, 3 pieces are very good to have. 3 pieces, but they show different ranges of your capabilities. One, and I could give you some examples of some narrative designers portfolio pieces, so you could just search them online. But generally speaking, they have 3 pieces. Usually it's one revolving around, let's say, world building. So you just completely just build the world from scratch there. So something like we did in our course, but like seriously built it. Like I'm talking, you have to be able to name each single region by top of your head and have them all very well geographically located, that it makes sense in terms of, let's say we take this and make it into a game, right? So things like that. So world building is probably the biggest one I see, because a lot of times fantasy games are going to rely on building worlds, and so yeah, so that's number one, a world building piece for sure. A next one would be a narrative design document. So here, this is really creating a game. It could be any mechanics. I have some examples in the course. I think I shot a couple of examples of ones that I've written that are very high level, but you could really go into proper design. But take a game, or make a game. Let's say it's a puzzle game or whatever it is. But just talk about the narrative. So how does the narrative influence the game mechanics, right? What is the narrative doing to drive the game from the first act to the second act to the third act? And what are the mechanics that a player is using in that sequence? That's another document I think is pretty important to have. And the third piece I would say is dialogue. And of course, we do have a little dialogue with Ansgar, Tim, Sanderson, all those army veterans. But obviously, you could create anything you want. I would suggest deep diving into dialogue and having character sheets and DNAs associated with those dialogues. So obviously, it has a primer. You see these are the characters involved. You have character A, character B, character C. Do a full DNA deconstruction of them. Biography, back history, in terms of what they're doing, back history at the present, what's their future goals, relationship status. I mean, those. I think Yuri in the class mentioned a bit more of a larger DNA that you can do. Generally, I kept the assignment light because I don't want to ask people to write 3 pages, but it takes 3 pages. So really flesh out those characters and then create your dialogue scene, or create a scene in an area that there's a conversation regarding it. Those are the 3 pieces I would use in my website as a portfolio piece: world building, narrative design document, script with character sheets. Okay. Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. So Narumi asks, "Hi Emilio, I have a bachelor's degree in computer science and I'm currently trapped in the financial industry. However, I don't like code actually, and I'm more interested in narrative design. Is it still possible to become a narrative designer? Any advice to become one?" Yes, there is. There's always a chance. Look, I don't know how old you are, and I'm not going to assume either. I was 27 when I decided to go into game design. Generally, in theory, I'm not a spring chicken. This is something that I should have did a while ago. But as I was saying to Marina before, as long as you know what you want, and you're able to learn and grasp and be able to excel, you can do it. There's no issues with that. I know people. I know an individual who's getting out of tech engineering and moving into narrative design, and they're 50. There's no age. There's no age for passion. My aunt, she works at Air Canada, and then she loves wine. You know, she wants to be. She always wanted to be a sommelier. To the point where I go, listen, Zia. We call them Zia ants or Zia in Italian. I go, Zia, stop what you're doing. If you're miserable, if you don't like it, like go into something you enjoy. Life is short. There's no point making yourself feel miserable for nothing. When everyone else is doing their passions, why can't you do it? It doesn't make sense. So you should do it. Do it. And my suggestion, and I said in the beginning, is find what if you want to make that switch, search online to what narrative design job descriptions are, right? See what the requirements are. Pick one of them that you don't feel good on and just excel at it. Try to understand it. Try to grasp the concepts. Really expand your knowledge in that subject. Read, listen to podcasts, listen to GDC talks on narrative design. Really grasp the fundamentals of it. And that's it. And plug away. That's my advice for that. So Derrickson asked, do I need to publish a game to have a good portfolio, or can documentation draw attention? Documentation draws attention. I don't think if you have a prototype. So prototypes very different than publishing. And this is my ratio for that. I think when if you have a design document and you have, let's say, a concept that you've done mechanically. So let's say you're doing systems design, right? You apply as a systems designer and you want to showcase that you understand the systems. You can create a document around the systems, and then you could have, let's say, a short minute demo reel of the game, the mechanic working inside a game, so they could understand that you know how to encapsulate what you've written into a concept. It's not necessarily needed, but like I said, absolutely, don't need to publish a game. Documentation is enough. I got hired just with documentation, so I don't think it's not mandatory. I'm just gonna grab a drink of water because I've been talking for 43 minutes. Delicious. Okay. Henry asks, you mentioned that indie studios lack of structure. Any advice to build that structure? Are there any courses, etc. I could look into? Okay. So what I meant by that is successful indie companies don't lack structure. Like take Compulsion Game. I'm just gonna throw some names out in Montreal. Compulsion Games. The guys who created Cuphead, like they had good structure. I was saying the small collaborations that you'll find on Facebook lack the structure. Those guys, hey guys, I'm making a game. I need an artist who wants to join my team. Okay, I'll join your team. Those ones, the ones that are on Facebook, because I've seen them. I've been part of some of them. They lack the structure because they do not understand how to go about really setting up the game process. And any advice to build that structure? Well, this is another 15-minute conversation I could have with you guys on what it is when you're designing the structure for a game. So generally speaking, I'm gonna do it really quickly because I could spend an hour talking about this. What you need to do is you need to understand what's your scope. So what is the game you're making? Let's say you're making a mobile game. I'll throw anything. Let's say Tetris, whatever. So you're building Tetris, okay? So what do we need in Tetris? First of all, before you even come up with anything, at least have a at least have, let's say, an understanding of the market. So first, before you design, you make your design document, you do your market benchmark. So you look at all the games that are similar to Tetris or whatever, or are Tetris, whatever it is, and you take all the information you have and you say, okay, these are the pros and cons. These are all the good games that are out there. We could take all these features, we could implement into our games, and these are the ones we don't want. Okay. So now you have an idea of where you want to go with your game. So then you got to break it down into different milestones and different gates. A gate is generally, let's say, a first playable, an MVP, an alpha, a beta, a soft launch, and then a launch. Those are the general ones that we have. So then you say, okay, based on how our production is, how fast we are, how many weeks does it require to do, let's say, the FP, the first playable of the game. So then a milestone, generally speaking, is about I would say about 6 weeks, broken down into sprints. So sprint 1, sprint 2. So then you break down. So you say, okay, I think to have a first playable, so a game like a Tetris, very brief Tetris of the game working, I would say it would take us, let's say, 5 months. You assume no one knows the answer. It's very hard, but you say 5 months. Okay, so in 5 months, how many weeks in 5 months? Okay, it's whatever. I don't know. I'm just gonna throw a number. I'm not the top of my head. Let's say it's 20 weeks, whatever. Then you say, okay, let's break it down into, it's more than 20 weeks. It's way more than 20 weeks. Let's say we break it down into different milestones. So then you break down, you take your 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, and then you say, okay, then you do a planning day. You say, okay, guys, for this whole milestone, the next 6 weeks, what is our objectives here? What did we learn from the previous one, and how do we go about making sure our game is better in the next milestone update? So, okay, guys, what we need for Tetris, we're starting the game, so we need documentation. Okay, so start writing all documentation. What do we need to have? Is it going to be, and we start off first by moment to moment. So gameplay. So we need to make sure that the game is fun, that the players sit down, they're able to move a brick, place the brick, and then move the next brick, place the next brick. That's moment to moment. And you start writing documentation for that. And then you go on to macro. So, okay, now there's like, say, a leveling system. Then you go say, is there like a long-term system? So long-term players, they have, they get achievements, collectibles, all that stuff. That's all designed in the feature. But as you can see, I went through the whole process of designing the game for the longevity of it in the production cycle. A lot of the times, these small Facebook groups, they have no idea what that is. So they just say, okay, I think this is next. No, you have to know what's next. You have to know what is the next step, like 3 months before, because that's how you properly structure, and that's how you can properly showcase, if you have investors, the plan. What are things that you could learn? I mean, Agile Scrum. To give you a sum up there, Agile Scrum is probably the best thing I could discuss in terms of that. But it's not the best. It's not the best thing because it's a lot more than just Agile Scrum. So yeah, that's it. That's a long answer. I try to sum it up really quickly, but for sure it's quite a bit. Can I view this video after? Yeah, so this video is going to be published. I think it's going to be published here, but I'm also going to attach it to our Facebook channel as well. So on the side, I have a Facebook channel, and I'm going to post a link in here too. Could you show us some examples of narrative design portfolios? I think I have time. I will post, if anything. I'm going to write it in here as well. I will post some narrative design portfolio pieces that I have information on in the chat as well. So I have quite a few tasks to do right after this, but that's fantastic. I love it. So I'll post it after. Okay, so Maria asks, how can narrative designer ideas be protected from being used elsewhere without our permission? Well, if I'm being honest, there's so much reuse nowadays. I wouldn't be too worried about that. In theory, if you put something online and someone steals it, like, it's just what it is. You could copyright your work. So in my website, I have at the bottom, I put copyright 2022, right? So they know that it's copyrighted, but it's not really copyrighted, but it's just there. You can't really stop people from stealing your ideas. I mean, to be honest, millions of people around the world have millions of ideas. Like, it's not something. And I'm not saying your idea is bad at all. I'm just saying, from what I know, I've seen a lot of ideas go back and forth, and a lot of people have different ideas. So I wouldn't be too worried about someone stealing it and then having the capital to finance and build that. Generally speaking, for at least for AAA companies, they have RDD guys who like research and development groups that when they're creating a new concept, especially for a story, they'll have, let's say, groups go into focus groups and take a lot of stuff based on data. So that's the tools that they have at their disposal. I don't think they're gonna go scour for they're gonna go look at the internet for someone else's idea. I don't think so. I don't think so. It could happen, but I don't think so. But if you want, you just put on your portfolio pieces copyright stuff, and I think that'll be fine. You're welcome, Narumi. Luca asks, you could make a course to teach how to properly structure the development of design. That would be useful. Yeah, I could. Man, I have so many courses I want to do. I have so little time. There's a couple of courses that I wanted to create on the side. I know I'm sidetracking a bit. I have like 15 Word documents open here. Where is it? 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 1 second. So the ones that I currently have in my pipeline, on top of the stuff I want to add to narrative design, is I want to obviously have a rational masterclass, rational game design, which I think is really important. I want to do a game design one specifically. So really, as a designer, how do you take a concept? How do you make moment to moment? How do you create micro progression? So obviously, like how stuff that stays in the game, macro progression, long term, like midterm stuff, like leveling systems, things like that, long term achievements, collectibles. You even have cosmetics, but just talk about the process of designing that. I want to do that, and then obviously talk about live ops, how to create short, medium, and long term engagement loops as well associated with the design process. I want to do that. I also want to do a play and earn masterclass where it's crypto earning. I think this is a very interesting topic because it really and I know guys don't have to do it there, but I think the whole subject itself is interesting, and I think there's a lack of understanding of how to make games associated with that. So that's probably something that I'm looking at doing as well. That's way at the bottom of the bucket list there, but as opposed to the other stuff I want to do for the current existing classes. But I will keep that in mind though. 100% Luca. I think it's important to have, let's say, a structure, or at least explain the structure in one of the courses that I'm going to be doing for that. So Michael asks, it might be a difficult question, how to stop thinking like a gamer and start thinking like a game developer? Beautiful question. That is I think it's you shouldn't stop. You shouldn't stop thinking as a gamer, because it's good to put yourself in their shoes and see, okay, what would I feel? That's fantastic. But I think it's more on the rational aspect of it, of why, as a developer, am I designing this feature? What do I want to extract from the player? What kind of feeling? And that all that information, I'm just gonna get up. Ugh. Okay. That's all here. Gamification is probably the one book that I would say has helped me as a designer understand, okay, why are we developing features for game players? What is the features trying to tell us? What can we extract from them to make them immersed and hooked? What can we pull from their desires, their wants, their needs? And these are all things that are going to resonate with you 100%. I'll give you an example here. So this book is called Yukai, and I'm going to put this in the list as well, by Yukai Chu. I just want to show page. Just want to show the page where he talks about the Octalysis framework, which I'm sure you guys could probably search it there before I even find the page. But the Octalysis framework discusses. I'm not going to find it. Discusses the 8 intrinsic motivations of players, and I'm going to just read them. So the first one's meaning, then it's accomplishment, empowerment, ownership, social influence, scarcity, unpredictability, and avoidance. These are the 8 things that intrinsically make us behave almost unlogically sometimes. Those are the 8 big ones. And then under them, in a gaming thing, you could have, let's say, accomplishment could be, let's say, achievement points, or it could be ladder, like ladder ranking. Those are things that are in games, but they focus on that psychology framework. So as a designer, you have to obviously think rationally behind all your decisions. So I want to create this feature rationally. How is this thing going to be affected by the player? How could it be? Could it create toxicity? Could it create cheating? Could it be grieving other players? What's the goal of it in terms of the long-term aspect of it? So I make this feature. Can it be replicated? Can it be expanded? So there's a lot of things you have to think about. But also, as a gamer, I sit down, I want to play. What do I feel? Do I feel like I want to do this? What's attracting me to play it? So there's always 2 things. It's never stopping to learn how to do one. It's how could you merge both to be a kick-ass game designer. That's the biggest thing. And thank you. So that's I don't have any questions. I guess I'll say the last 4 minutes. I'll tell you the story of my experience with a Swedish company. I will not divulge the name. I'm just gonna have a bit of my espresso really quickly. And so I'll do a little story time. So in the beginning of the pandemic, I was approached by a company in Sweden uh, to work as a system designer, and so I said sure, not why not. And man, the process I think I went through at least we'll count them together, but I think 8 interviews. So at the time I was in Thailand, I was traveling. This was before just before the pandemic even hit, and then they started closing everything off. I was in Thailand, traveling around with my wife, and um, at one point I got contacted, so I had an initial interview with them while I was over there. So that's my first interview. Then I had an interview with the CEO, a quick chat. Then after that, I had to do an aptitude test. All the while at this point now I'm moving back to Sydney because that's where we were staying. I was living with her in Sydney. So I traveled back to Sydney while doing the test. So I did a test. Then after the test, I had an interview with the CEO again to talk about it. Then I had an interview with the two game designers on the team to get a better understanding of who they were. Then I had to have an interview with uh, the HR person just so that they could collect data on me to understand, what's my reactions or what's like background checks. Then I gave them the background checks, so I had to ask my friends to do these background checks. Then I had another interview with the person. Oh yes, I could talk about a little about the test, 100%. Then another interview with the person, the HR person again, a different HR person, and the point was that now the ninth step was they were gonna fly me to Sweden to meet the team. So okay, number one, guys, this does not make sense. This does not make sense. Like all this does not make sense. If after the third interview they're not giving you an offer or they're not interested to offer you something, go leave. Doesn't make sense. Because look, Ubisoft, I did 2 interviews. One interview with the HR, another interview with the team. A week later, got an offer. So at this point, it's like, well, what are you doing here? If a team is going through such a rigorous steps to recruit you, that means that they have another candidate and they're not 100% sold on your capabilities. So at that point, while you're freaking out, sweating at home, like, oh, what's going on? Don't, do not put yourself through that. Just tell them honestly, you guys, I respect your process. Your process is unfortunately too slow. Because while I'm losing hair, these guys are probably interviewing other people, and they're probably not even. Anyways, long story, I didn't get the job because the pandemic happened, and I couldn't even get flown to Sweden. So that's what it was. So I mean, that's life. Um, but just to say, it's that's just what happens. In those instances, it's just I realized a lot of times, like even the new company I worked for, I had interview with the CEO, interview with HR, game designers, uh, at game designers. I had but the whole time, I could tell you because I did 2 more interviews after that. The whole time, I could tell you that it was a shoe in because I'm talking to HR to go honestly. You just goes. I just want you to meet you these guys because the position I'm working is senior. So obviously it's not just a regular designer. It's I'm working like the direction of the game. So I have to meet some of the big guys. But throughout the process that after interview 3, like you're a shoe in. So see, I had a conversation with the 2 directors, monetization and art, and then the producer, and then I got the offer. So the thing is, like, you're gonna have different processes everywhere, which isn't bad. But if they're asking for a background check, if they're asking for an aptitude test, if they're asking for all this stuff, at that point, after 7, 8 interviews, it's like, man, this is getting ridiculous. So I know it's 12, but I want to answer really quickly Derrickson's last question before we close the session. So the test. So basically, the test was you're creating a system for a game. So it was a system designer role. So they asked me to create a system, a full system for a game that they only gave me two references. They said these are the demographics for the gamers. It's women. The ages between 12 and 16, and this is the game genre fantasy. Fantasy, it's where people they collect whatever. Create a system that could be used to create community growth. That's it. That's it. That's all I got. So for me, what I did was I had to say, okay. First of all, number one, what information do I know about this demographic? So you go online and you say, okay, what do they have here? What is this demographic like? They like simulation and they like fantasy. Okay, so those are my two big points: simulation, fantasy, and achievements. Three. So I say, okay, so my feature has to incorporate all three of them: fantasy, simulation, this and that. I say, okay, this is the game, collecting stuff. So then I create a whole star system where players could earn and collect, whatever the schematic was there by performing actions in a community. So the more people that engage, the better the content was going to be for everybody. So you create unity in that aspect. It was a good project. I mean, look, they continue there, but that was more or less a test. Generally speaking, tests are going to be very vague and they're going to be left open to as much interpretation as possible. They do it on purpose. And a lot of times these tests, they don't even want you to pass it. They want you to fail it. Because they'll ask you questions for roles that are way beyond realistic expectations. Because I can tell you for a fact, working at Ubisoft as a designer, I've done stuff there where I'm like this is easy. What's going on here? So that's that. Tests, I wouldn't be worried too much about them. And if ever you guys do have tests and you have questions that you want to ask me on the tests, I won't give you the answers. I can't. I can't. But I could give you an idea of the direction you should probably be taking. Yeah. So I'm gonna answer Maria's question right now, really quickly, right before we close it. Is it possible to work from home and not travel as a narrative designer, or do you need to be in the studio? Absolutely not. I'm actually, man, it was gonna be on YouTube. I can't say it, um, but I can type it. But I won't. I won't type it. Um, the industry has evolved to a point where working from anywhere or working from home has become a staple that is gonna stay. So the company that I'm going for, they're based in Paris, and they've allowed me to work from anywhere. So yes, the short answer is yes. It is possible to find a job with a company um, to work from home, 100%. I don't see this is the new norm. This is where the industry is going, and it should be like that. I'm a hypocrite, and I'll tell you why. I was an avid person that said, "No, you got to be at the studio. There's intangibles at the studio. You got to be at the studio to work." I used to disagree with people online that remote work was impossible. It's not feasible, and I ate those words, and I ate those words really quickly, because at UB right now, like there's a person I got hired there. I got hired in June 2020. It's February 2021. I've worked with somebody. I've never met them in real life. And I'm leaving. I've never physically met them. Not once. But he does a good job and we collaborate very well. So at that point, you tell yourself, man, at this point, if this is possible, I mean, it doesn't make sense that they're gonna offer that they won't offer you that. My thing is that a lot of times, a lot of indie companies are more flexible. AAA companies are less because they have a lot of constraints in terms of what they can do. That's the only reason why I say AAA is a bit harder to get that working versus in smaller companies, which they're more flexible. They generally are. But it is 100% possible. I mean, look, that's what I'm going to be doing. At the company that I just got hired, they go, listen, we're gonna have to fly you out to Paris a couple times a year to meet the team, but other than that, you have full reigns of working from home. So I said that's perfect. That's exactly what I need, because I'm going to be moving a lot. I'm in Montreal right now, but I'm probably going to be moving to Vancouver in next, I want to say January or December. So moving it's very important for me. So that's it. So yes, to answer your question, Maria, yes, 100% possible. And yeah, I think well that's it, guys, guys and gals, and everybody else for coming. I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you guys have any other questions, obviously feel free to poke me. I'm not sure when we'll do the next AMA, as this one was really close to the previous one. I want to keep a month difference to give it a lot of people to come in, but we did have a lot of growth, which is fantastic. But yeah, so like I said, I'm gonna be posting in the group the names of the tools for narrow design programming, the rest that I have, the list of books that I like using, and post some design portfolios so you guys could check out. And as always, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact me as much as you can. I have my consultation thing that's still live. We're still doing it. I'll post that also with the rest of the stuff in there as well. And yeah, thank you all for coming. We're the first group we had 4 people. Now we have 12, which is for me that's a big win. I love that. I love seeing more people being engaged in this stuff. And I'm like I said, I'm here to help. I'm here. Use me as your slave, as they say. That's terrible use. Let's not say that. Sorry. Use me as your friend. That's better. I'm here to help you guys. I want to help you. I want you guys to get in. I want you guys to join me, and I want to work with you guys in the future for sure at the same company. That would be awesome. And I'm here to give you guys as much information as I can divulge to help you. So yeah, so that's it for this AMA. And like I said, guys, reach out to me whenever, and I'll be posting all the updates. So with that note, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, if it's morning, afternoon, or night. Thank you very much.